You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by listeners like you, supporters on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 457, Twisted.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we take a look at each and every episode of Star Trek, bending around each and every corner, searching for the morals, meanings, and messages, and seeing if they withstand the twist of time.
This week, Twisted, the one where not only the Voyager gets bent out of shape, but so do a few of the crew.
I'll be back with trivia in a moment, right after Norman tells you how you can reach us.
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Twitter and Facebook at MissionLogPod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember your comments could be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, here is John Champion with this week's trivia.
All right, this week we have a story by Arnold Rudnick and Rich Hosek, and these are two names that are new to us in our Star Trek coverage, and this is the only credit they both have with the franchise. Now, prior to this, they had successfully sold a story to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and shortly after Voyager, they both worked as writers and consultants on multiple episodes, the entire series, in fact, of The New Addams Family. So, they had pitched this idea and sold the story, but unfortunately the draft script came in much too short. It was up to the others on the staff to really fill it out with an additional 8 minutes of material. So the teleplay then is credited to Kenneth Biller, but it was also with the guidance of Jerry Taylor's hand to add in the additional material that they needed. In the end, a lot of those extra minutes were made up for in Voyager's corridors, with longer scenes played out with our crew being lost. It was directed by Kim Friedman, and we don't want to tip anyone's hand here this early in our podcast today, but it is worth keeping in mind that even this veteran Star Trek director had a reportedly difficult time with the material. While she overall directed 6 episodes of DS9 and 4 of Voyager, this was her final episode for this series. Last of these Season 1 holdovers. Now, we had talked before about the change-up in the broadcast schedule and how 4 episodes from Season 1 were held over until Season 2. With this episode, we are now officially done with those. Everything going forward was shot for the season that we are in. Also worth noting that even though this is a bottle show with minimal guest appearances, the budget did have to absorb some pretty extensive CG sequences, and might I say expensive CG sequences, which were still a rarity in 1995. Let's talk about our guest stars. 2 of our holodeck regulars are back at Chez Sandrine. Those would be Gaunt Gary, played again by Larry Hankin, and Sandrine herself, played again by Judy Geeson. Putting an end to an era, though, this is the final Star Trek appearance for both actors. And returning as well in a guest star role, it's everyone's favorite memorable USS Voyager gym rat, the guy who works out really hard and needs to be patched up by the EMH from time to time. It's Lieutenant Baxter, played here again by Tom Virtue. You remember Baxter from his many previous appearances, like in the episode Eye of the Needle, and that's it. That's the only other one. But that's not to make light of Tom. You may recall that last time we mentioned how he's been in some big feature films like Iron Man 3 and Green Book, plus numerous TV series like American Horror Story and The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Now, Lieutenant Baxter may not have made the cut to come back to Voyager, but Tom does. We will see him again in Season 7 in a different role.
I've been waiting for this one, with Bill Paxton and the Tornadoes. Oh, wait, I believe I had cross-referenced the wrong database entry. I am very disappointed.
Prologue. Cass walks into a quiet holodeck simulation of Chez Sandrine. It's dark and empty until her friends and crewmates emerge from the darkness and yell, "Surprise!" ringing in her second birthday. It's an old Earth tradition, and even the Doctor is on hand, his hologram projected to serve as Sandrine's bartender. Neelix brings a cake he baked, as gifts are given to Kes, like the beautiful locket that Tom Paris had replicated. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Tuvok is in command, and Harry Kim is anxious to leave his post to join the others at Kes's party. As he turns to leave, though, an ominous, swirling anomaly appears on the main viewer, and Tuvok says he'll have to wait. When he calls down to the holodeck to alert the captain, something happens, and Tuvok's voice, describing the phenomenon, is distorted, garbled, and endlessly repeated. Act 1. Dance Mix Tuvok is still pumping through the PA system, and B'Elanna can't figure out why until it just stops. Something is clearly wrong. Comm systems are down, so they can't call the bridge, which means the party is over and everyone needs to get back to their stations. On the bridge, the anomaly has been classified as a kind of spatial distortion that is surrounding the ship, and Tuvok makes the call that they should just try to go through it. Problem is, engines are offline. Harry is dispatched to find the captain, and on his way he's met by Lieutenant Baxter, who also says comm systems are down, and on top of that, the temperature in the gym dropped down below 10 degrees Celsius. Harry advises that he report to his duty station until they figure out what's happening. On their way to the bridge, Janeway, Paris, and Chakotay are surprised to discover that the turbolift took them to the wrong deck. Some sort of communications error? They'll try again. In another corridor, Cass and Neelix talk about the party. She says she loved seeing her friends, while Neelix steers the conversation toward his own jealousy, but I'm not jealous over Paris's gift. This uncomfortable moment is sidelined by their realization that they are not, in fact, approaching Kes's quarters where they thought they were. Likewise, B'Elanna winds up in the mess hall when she thought she was entering engineering, and then there's Janeway stepping off the turbolift into engineering. Nothing is where it should be. It gets weirder. B'Elanna then finds herself entering another room she thinks is engineering, turns out to be a transporter room, and there's Baxter, who thought he was on his way to the cargo bay. He can't find where he's going and can't find his security team. Even the EMH isn't where he should be, since all attempts to get back to sickbay just land him back in Chez Sandrine, where Sandrine herself is still very happy to see him. He asks Harry to give the hollow emitters a look and try to get him out of there. Harry leaves and bumps into, well, everyone else, also lost and unable to find where they're trying to go. Act 2. Everyone is back on the holodeck, assessing their situation. The anomaly, the distortion ring surrounding the ship, is somehow bending the location of everywhere that they're trying to go inside Voyager. They started in the Deck 6 holodeck, pretty much in the middle, and they keep ending up recentered there. They need to get back to the bridge, so they'll split up in teams, with some trying to go on foot, others trying to get to engineering or a transporter room and transport there. They'll also use tricorders with photoplasmic scans to gather data about the shape and changes made in Voyager. Kes will stick around in the holodeck to help the Doctor. B'Elanna and Tom make it to engineering, where the crew are told to stay at their posts, including the one guy in his undies, whose quarters now open directly into engineering. Chakotay and Neelix make their way down a corridor, with some awkward talk about jealousy, when they encounter Lieutenant Baxter, still walking around looking for his security team. That leads us to Janeway and Kim, crawling through a Jeffries tube where the captain decides to spend a moment thanking him for his excellent service. The longer they scan the area, they finally arrive at a doorway that should lead to a cargo area behind the bridge, but once it's opened, it reveals a swirling, distorted Jeffries tube on the other side, one that drags Janeway's arm into it and won't let go. Act 3. Kim jumps into action, pulling the captain out of the distorted tube and quickly closes the door. They realize that the distortion is now inside the ship, not just surrounding it. But before they can chat about it longer, Janeway passes out. In the holodeck, the EMH is facing all kinds of harassment from Gaunt Gary and Sandrine. Kes comes in, reporting that she hasn't made any progress with the holo-emitters. She is soon followed by Kim, carrying an unconscious Captain Janeway. Chakotay and Tuvok find themselves at a fork in the corridors. Even though they disagree about the best direction to go and walk off separately, they end up right back in front of each other. But in engineering, it looks like some real progress is being made. They fire up the site-to-site transporter, and B'Elanna and Tom expect to wind up right on the bridge, except they don't. Instead, they just materialize on the pool table at Chez Sandrine. With Janeway out of it, that leaves Chakotay in charge, and he's got the team together, not you, Neelix, who wandered off, here to figure out a new plan. They've got 2 tasks. 1, map the changes that have been made to Voyager, and 2, figure out how to stop the spatial distortions. The first step is pretty easy. Once they load all the tricorder data into a computer, it's weird. Just a bunch of bending, flexing, morphing parts of the ship, and what's worse, it's imploding. It hasn't affected Deck 6 where they are just yet, but it will, and Tuvok estimates that their time will run out in a little over an hour. Act 4. So they've got a problem, but no real knowledge of how it started or how to get out. If they're in a slow-moving implosion, B'Elanna proposes that they could initiate a shock pulse, a kind of controlled explosion from engineering to blow the spatial distortion away and Voyager along with it. It's exceedingly dangerous, with no real protection for good portions of the crew and a high probability of destroying the ship along with it. Chakotay gives the go-ahead, and Tuvok immediately questions the decision in favor of something less risky, like trying thrusters to push their way out. With time running out, and tensions running high, Chakotay asserts his command and tells B'Elanna and Harry to get to it. They do. There's a countdown next to the warp core as the shock burst rips through the ship, shaking everything violently, but they're okay, only the distortions are still rampant throughout the ship. Janeway is still barely conscious, just able to eke out a couple of unintelligible words when Chakotay tries to talk with her. Then B'Elanna and Harry run in to tell the bad news to everyone else. Their attempt drew the spatial distortion in closer and at a faster rate. The implosion is now coming for them all much faster, and there's no time to try Tuvok's original plan. The crew look on in disbelief as the distortion makes its way through the holodeck doorway and ever closer to them. Act 5. Time for another last-ditch effort. B'Elanna and crew attempt to set up a holographic force field to keep the anomaly out of the holodeck, and that doesn't work either. Tuvok jumps in with a new plan, though. Do nothing. Just wait it out, since nothing else has worked. Inaction is only logical. If they sit back, the distortion may pass its course. Just then, Janeway rises up from the bench where she's been unconscious, blurting out something about it talking to her. Also sounds like do nothing, but okay, guess nobody's going to put any stock in that. Chakotay finds himself aligning with Tuvok. Maybe they need to take a course of inaction. And then the crew who are assembled in the holodeck brace themselves for something. Or nothing. Tuvok and Chakotay make nice in what could be their final words to each other. Others stand and stare at the approaching distortion. Even Gaunt Gary backs away from the morphing pool table. The distortion passes like a wave over the crew, and then it's gone. Janeway was tuned into it, though. She says it was a message, a form of communication. As the distortion ring moves further away from Voyager and the crew arrive back at the bridge, more surprises are in store. The anomaly, whatever it was, copied and downloaded Voyager's computer library, and also left behind some 20 million gigaquads of new information. Maybe it was just trying to say hello. Oh, God, and here comes Neelix with some cake. The end.
Personally, John, I really would like a slice of cake. And I'm glad that you ended with such an upbeat message with, who wants cake?
Who done, yeah.
Great job on the synopsis. Great job on
Thank you. Because look,
there.
Neelix has been walking around with that cake for a very long time, and it's got the layers of fudge.
7
It's got the layers of fudge. It's got the pureed nut frosting, whatever. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's delicious.
That's the name of our album for today. Pureed nut frosting.
That's it. It's the phrase that pays.
All right, gotta get serious here. Or not.
Hey, by the way, do you remember the days when we were all cool with somebody just blowing out candles on a cake? Okay.
I do.
Because now, not so much. Now I see a scene like that, and I'm like, ooh, that's dangerous. So, all right, I got to say that for this episode, one thing that I like right at the very beginning is I really like this moment of Tuvok not breaking the facade, but still being really cool. He's the cool boss in that moment to let Harry leave work early.
Yeah.
Like that is exactly the way to write while staying in character, putting something in the voice of the character.
They've come so far from that kind of that passive aggressive I am that Tuvok sent Harry.
Yes.
About, being excited on the bridge and, they're texting each other and Tuvok's all in his face about it. To now, it was nicely written. It was nicely written. And then, John, there's going to be like a lot of, this was great, and then there's this. Yeah. So I don't want to make a big deal about this, but I will. Because we're Star Trek fans, and when you say certain things, when you describe certain things in such a way, it engages our visual understanding of what's happening in the story. The anomaly is a ring. And this is something that in any science fiction fandom, I don't care what it is, you are dealing with 3 dimensions. So Harry Kim, he's intelligent, but not experienced. His pattern indicates 2-dimensional thinking.
See? There you go. Nice.
Fly upwards through the ring. And this episode is over.
He honestly, he could have even given it a cool name. Like, use evasive pattern Kim 4 Alpha, which means go up.
Exactly. Because we don't want Omega.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. Yeah.
So, no. But I'm it's like, I know it's weird and people are out there like, Norm, really calm down. I'm like, no, you calm down because it's a ring. You fly upwards through it. It's not like a bubble or a gas cloud, which we've seen before, which has incapacitated the Voyager, on occasion. So I'm going to bring it up.
Nice. And I liked how you called it the Voyager, too.
Isn't that how we're supposed to call it? Is the Voyager? No?
Got to read the style guide, man.
Oh.
All right, so Baxter, by the way, I really need to point out, Baxter is working out so hard that he didn't notice a temperature drop to under 10 degrees Celsius. He is very hardcore. He is the most hardcore person on that ship. Just in case you didn't know, it's Lieutenant Baxter. Anybody asks who's the most hardcore person? It's Baxter. Why we don't have an action figure of him? I don't know. Somebody should make it.
Is Baxter the Chuck Norris of this crew?
I think so. I think from now on, every meme about Voyager will have to be about how tough Baxter is.
I'd love to see Chakotay try and throw a punch at Baxter. He would hit Baxter, and then like all of Chakotay's bones would break because it's 10 degrees cooler.
Exactly. And you dare not let Baxter punch a guy like Dalby in the mess hall, because then it's all over for Dalby.
No, he'd turn into basically atoms. That's what would happen. Yeah.
All right. I know we're going to get to it later, and I know that it will always come up, but Neelix, giving off the creep vibes big time, few times in this episode, but by literally steering the conversation with Cass. Oh, did you like the party? And the gift from Tom Paris. Look, I know that there will be a lot to discuss with Neelix, not only in this episode, but more to come. But just very early on, we're getting hit with that.
Okay, so I know what you're saying, and I completely agree with you. But there is kind of like this whole thing with Tom saying that 2 weeks worth of replicator rations, just to let you know. I'm like, there should be like a Seinfeld moment here. Like, how many replicator rations is the decorum? Like, is it 1 ration just for friends? Is it 2 weeks for something more than friends? How many rations? Like that kind of thing. Because 2 weeks of not spending on yourself to spend on somebody else, that's kind of suspect.
And is it more worth it to make, say, like 2 weeks worth of rations into, I don't know, several cheeseburgers? Like, you could do that.
But that's logical.
I know. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. Also cheeseburgers.
Right. I do love that there's a little dialogue between Baxter, again, the most hardcore guy on Voyager, Baxter and B'Elanna. And back there in the transporter room, where they run into each other, Baxter goes, Ensign Kim said we encountered a spatial distortion. And B'Elanna goes, did he say what kind? Does it matter? B'Elanna, it is the kind of spatial distortion that is bending your ship. That's the one you're in. That's it.
The only kind that would matter to Baxter would be a spatial distortion that dropped it 20 degrees
No, we don't want that. Because then you can't work out. You can't go hardcore in the gym.
Exactly. Yeah. Too many problems for your muscles. He'd have to see the EMH again and then be biased against the EMH again. All right, John. So I know that you're a trivia guy, but I have some trivia for you. I've never heard this phrase before, and when I hear phrases I've never heard before, I have to look them up on Memory Alpha because they have the definitions I'm looking for. Photoplasmic trail. That's what Chakotay said. He needs to reconfigure his tricorders with a photoplasmic trail to get the data for the corridors of the ship.
It almost sounds like a real-world phrase, Yeah.
It does. So I did look this up, and it said on Memory Alpha, from the Star Trek Encyclopedia, 4th edition, Volume 2, page 141, quote, "It may be a coincidence, but physicist Harvey P. Lynn Jr., Star Trek's first scientific consultant who worked with Gene Roddenberry during the early days of the original Star Trek series, suggested the term, quote-unquote, photoplasma for something in the first, quote-unquote, the cage. Although Roddenberry did not use this particular suggestion at the time, 3 decades later, Lynn's term finally made it to the screen."
Oh, how cool is that? And how unfortunate that Harvey Lynn is not around to talk to anymore, because that would have been the guy to talk to. That's so cool. Very cool. There is something that happens over and over in this episode, which I feel like I need to point out, because Star Trek in general is smarter, more thoughtful, definitely more scientific than just, say, like the run-of-the-mill average horror movie. Stop splitting up. Stop, Neelix, I'm looking at you. Stop wandering away. But any and all of you, stop splitting up, because, that's when you get into trouble. And I said before there was going to come up again, and now it's coming up again because it's another scene. Neelix going on and on about Kes remembering the location of others' quarters. I mean, look, that's the reason that even Chakotay looks bummed out when he gets teamed up with Neelix. Like Janeway throws that at him, I want you to walk around with Neelix. Like, okay.
It was literally like getting the last person picked in the dodgeball team.
It's over, yeah.
Also, but it did provide us with some funny moments when Neelix said, he said to Chakotay, I would imagine you've had some experience with women, first of all. What is he, Riker?
Right.
Yeah. But Beltran, and I will apologize to fans. I know that I said this earlier on. I do believe it was an elogium that I kept referring to Robert Beltran as Roger. I'm sorry, because that's just my mistake several times. So, yes. Robert Beltran, I like that he had this little bit of a smile, because was that Robert?
It was a very natural reaction.
I do like natural reactions like that. And in that same scene, probably one of my favorite parts of this episode is when Chakotay says to Neelix, "Nothing makes us more vulnerable than when we love someone. We can be hurt very easily, but I've always believed that what you get when you love someone is greater than what you risk." I thought that was a very, very nicely acted, nicely written scene.
It was nicely written, nicely acted, but... And I might even come back to it, because I think it provides one side of the equation. What it doesn't do is address the other side of the equation, which is Neelix stop being a jealous creep.
Oh, I thought you meant like Chakotay finding someone else to punch.
That might... So. Well, look, I'm not saying he wasn't tempted, because he might have been tempted. So
Baxter was lost, so he lost his opportunity for Baxter.
Going back into the holodeck, I do appreciate the EMH proposing the idea that maybe they're all hallucinating. It's like, that's something that he just throws out. Nobody really acknowledges that much. This is why I can't test it, because I don't have my equipment with me. And then it's just quickly forgotten. But it's like, but that is perfectly reasonable in a situation like that. Just like, maybe this is, Mass psychosis? Do you ever consider that?
Or remember last time? I was in this exact same situation not too long ago, and you all thought I wasn't hallucinating,
right.
So
exactly.
come on now. Right?
Exactly. Although, well, I guess in the production order, this would have come before that. So maybe he just gets a taste of his own medicine there in that respect. Oh, okay.
Ooh. So they twisted the order, is what you're saying?
Yes, they twisted. Well done. Well played. Maybe the one of the best scenes, probably my favorite line, is the EMH kind of getting, harassed on one side by Gaunt Gary, the other side by Sundreen, and he's stating his case and about his hands. They do not play games, and they do not mop floors. He's so wonderfully indignant, and I love it. And I love him for it. And I love, at some point, this had to be brought up. They're in there, and they're saying, well, everybody's doing this. And Harry's like, where's the rest of the crew? No kidding, Harry Kim. Because all we know is Baxter, and I'm tired of running into Baxter. But that's about it. Oh, and the guy in his underwear. All right,
So here are a couple things, and I know this is very probably nitpicky, but I'm a nitpicky person today. When Janeway snapped out of her trance and just kind of started to spouting gibberish, I don't even think Kate really understood what that scene's direction was all about. It felt so weird. Just weird.
Yep,
right?
100%. I'm with you on the weird train for that.
But here's something weird but also cool. See, her doing what she did was weird but weird. This is weird but cool. So there's a quote when I can't remember what it was, but someone said, a shock pulse of that magnitude would create a subatomic particle shower all over the ship. I only bring this up because it references two possible band names, even though we got our band name.
Yeah.
Shock pulse or subatomic particle shower.
God, that's so good. Yeah, those are
right. We have our 47 reference. Why? I don't understand why I just fixate
because
on
they
these.
do. Because Star Trek fixates.
I know.
So how can you not? Yeah.
Harry Kim yelling out the megapascals 47, 48, 49, but he really only yells out 47. The rest of them just kind of trail off.
Yeah.
All right, so John, here's our Dalby moment. I'm going to put this in the home game for everybody, but we do have a Dalby moment in this episode. So in Chez Sandrine, when the S is going to hit the fan, Chakotay just really throws down on Tuvok. In a way that he just sits down next to Dalby and decks him out of nowhere.
He snaps in a way that feels a bit out of place. And again, if we go in production order, this is before punching Dalby in the face in the mess hall. So maybe he just had to build up to that. Maybe this is he had it in mind. It was like, should I really do it to the Vulcan? Ooh, no. I'll save it. I'll save it for a better opportunity.
Here's something, maybe a pin to discuss, maybe later offline, with the fans when they write in. But having so many inconsistencies in characters, then putting all of these episodes out of order, really makes it hard to track the arc of a character.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? Except for certain things. I really did like when Tuvok put his hand near Janeway.
How good was that? That was honestly something that I appreciated and I looked for every time that I rewatched it. I was like, because it was like a little weird mind game with myself. Wait, does he actually touch Janeway at any point? Nope. I'm going to rewatch it. Nope, still doesn't. It was so perfectly Tuvok. Yeah.
There are very nice moments. Another nice moment was when Tom and Harry are kind of facing the inevitable, and Tom says, I chose this life, and I guess I always knew it would come to this. But yeah, I'm afraid. That was great.
Yeah.
It was written well. It was acted well. Yeah. It was great. One last thing, John, I know this is... I got to ask an important question. Cake, anyone?
Dismissed. That's Starfleet for get out.
There's actually a gym on Voyager? Hey Baxter, Brunk, why don't you just whip up a gym in the holodeck, Brunk?
We will get right back to Twisted after a word from this week's sponsor, and that sponsor is you. More specifically, all of our friends and patrons who are over at patreon.com/missionlog who have joined us there to get some exclusive access to, well, early release of our episodes, video behind the scenes of our episodes, exclusive swag, and dare I say, Norman, most important, the Mission Log Discord.
Oh, dare.
I dared. Why don't you tell us about it? What's happening over there?
Mission Log Discord was created specifically when COVID had so many of us isolated and we didn't have anywhere to go or specifically have anyone to talk to. So John and I decided to create an online forum where fans, friends, and a community could be, supported and grown so that we can just stay in touch with each other, either through video or through different chat channels where we share all of our fandoms and just stay connected as a community. And that's what it's become, and it's become even more than that in the span of almost a year's time.
And what's nice is that it is a positive, excited, friendly community for anybody who wants to join. And you can join it by joining us at Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/missionlog, you can sign up for as little as $1 a month, and then that gives you full access to our Discord. So we hope to see you there. And here's a little exclusive bonus. When this episode drops, we will be a week away from the 2022 Star Trek Las Vegas event Creations 56-year mission, and Patreon members get invited to an exclusive party there with us, only for Patreon Mission Log members. So if you join, or if you're already a member and you haven't checked it out, go there to the Cons and Events channel and you will find out all about it. So join us, patreon.com/missionlog, and a big shout out to some of our most recent members, Scott, Mark, Brandon, Trektacular, love that, Kathy and Jeremy. Welcome to the community, and we will see you all soon. Patreon.com/missionlog. All right, Norman, I have to admit that in the years of doing Mission Log, I started out when I was a kid really knowing TOS. You only had those 79 episodes, and they just kind of burned into your mind, right? And then TNG comes along, and, those early movies, there's only so many of those to remember. But the more and more Star Trek there is, the more and more titles there are to remember. Got to admit, gets a little harder to remember. It gets a little harder to catalog everything, what happens in what episode. And this one, I feel like in 5 years, if you come up and say Twisted, I may not know, but if you say it's the one where everybody's just walking around corridors, then I'll know. Then I will remember that episode. I feel like there is a lot of walking around in corridors in this episode. Am I wrong?
No, but at the same time, though, I bet you production was like, yeah, this is going to be good for us. Because all you really need to do is just turn the camera one way, and they're like, oh, we're walking down another corridor. Then turn the camera around another way, and but you're lost, though.
Yeah. So 2 things about that. I did mention in trivia how they were 8 minutes short when it came to the scripting of this episode. So if this was TNG days, if this was early DS9 days, you would have Michael Piller come along and do some Piller filler. And sometimes that Piller filler would be some of those poignant, introspective, thoughtful moments for a character to share. Just all in the interest of padding out an episode where you don't have enough action or you don't have the budget to fill in an action scene. And somehow you just get this moment of magic between characters. Well, they had a lot of filler they had to do here, and it doesn't quite have that deft hand that Michael Piller had back in the day. You're trying to fill in some spaces here that are empty, and what we get is a lot of walking and maybe a lot of forced character moments. And I guess maybe for the purposes of this segment, we're looking at the plot of the story, but we're also looking at what do we actually get out of the characters in those scenes. Because you've got 2 levels of this episode. You just have the getting from point A to point B, which is we're in the distortion, we need to get out of the distortion. It's solving the science problem of the week. But then you have the character arcs, the mini arcs for this story. And I guess we got to start where maybe there's the most to discuss, and that's Neelix and how much I am resenting Neelix here.
Yep.
Yeah. How much of the depth and nuance that we got before that is just being squandered. Look at Jetrel. Look at how happy you and I were to see that parallel episode of DS9 Duet and give Neelix to give him a soul, to give him this really, this hurt part of him. And now he's just acting out in a way that is so reprehensible, so annoying, and so badgering toward the person that he supposedly cares the most about. So there's that conversation that he does have, that some of the filler here, conversation he's having with Chakotay about jealousy. Commander, tell me about jealousy. But even then, I agree with you, Norman, that there is something positive in that moment, that there are good moments there for Chakotay, where he kind of acknowledges what's going on. He's reading between the lines. Yeah. But I feel like what we get out of it is basically Chakotay turning to Neelix and saying, jealousy, it's a thing, and it's powerful. And then nothing really helpful beyond that.
Yeah.
Because
what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, because what Neelix needs is help. There's the acknowledgement. And the acknowledgement is good. Phrasing it the way that Chakotay did, I think is relatable. And you can go like, oh, yes, that's why jealousy is such a powerful thing. But what we don't get is the next step. What we don't get is Chakotay saying, by the way, Neelix, are you struggling with jealousy? Because I've noticed some things, and maybe I can find somebody for you to talk to.
I think that I'm gonna steal like what I said earlier, and I think that one of the big problems is how we're watching the episodes and how we're watching these characters unfold out of order inconsistently, because there are supposed to be mini arcs in characters where they're starting to grow and starting to shed some of their bad behavior because they're learning along the way and they're trying to be better per episode. Now, if these episodes were actually produced, and then released in order, that would make sense. It would make sense that in a few episodes, there are a handful of concentrated Neelix being a jerk type of arcs. And then all of a sudden later on, maybe after Jetrel, getting into the 37s, I wouldn't necessarily say elogium. But see, that's what I mean, though, because it's not... When you said that what Neelix needs here is help, no, what he needs is a better writer. Okay. Let's be honest. I mean, let's look at the practicality of it. What we want are great characters that are crafted by great writers. And in this case, I'm not putting it solely on the writers, because there are occasions where Neelix is just, when he says, "You, my dears, have seen the last of that green-eyed pusshog called jealousy." Have we, though? Have we really? No. I want to believe that, but I don't think we have. And it's getting old. I mean, come on. Like, when you create a story like Jetrel, drop that on an audience and say, this is where this character can go, and you haven't gone anywhere close to return to that character and what that character is about. Yeah. And all you do is just go back to the default, this annoying lizard lion alien that I was trepidatious about at the beginning. Well, maybe it's because I had good reason. Yeah. Right? Maybe the audience itself had good reason. So all you have is this incredible potential of a character who's just fallen from grace since Jetrel and hasn't gotten any better since.
I will give the writers a little bit of benefit of the doubt here, which is that, okay, this episode actually belonged in season 1, so it belonged far earlier than we're getting to it now, or certainly than an audience would have caught it in 1995. And even the writers seeing something like this are like, okay, we're done with the jealousy thing. We're done. Now, that's not to say that this won't come up again with Neelix, but to see this stuff back to back, they're like, ooh, wow, okay, we need to figure out the other stuff that drives Neelix as well, because this is much. And it's definitely a bit much coming this late, seeing it out of order like this. So they weren't unaware, but the playback order of this, look, it's bad stuff anyway, but the playback order does not do it any favors at all. And by the way, that line about the green-eyed puss hog, he is clearly trying to fool her, trying to fool himself, and he's not believing it himself either.
If we don't believe it, if they don't believe it, if the characters don't believe it, we don't believe it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's a huge disconnect, right? We want to believe that these characters, we want to have that verisimilitude of the effect, of the illusion that these characters are real. We're watching the historical documents like they did in Galaxy Quest. We're watching people in real time doing real things and believing that their choices are real.
And that is a problem, because then if you don't find the sincerity in a character, it's not to say that every character has to be the same all the time, but if you don't find the sincerity in the character to ground you, then the other things play off as false. Even Neelix showing up with a cake, it's like, you know what? You're just trying to win people over again. Is there sincerity in this?
Right. The cake scene at the end wasn't about her. It's about him.
About him. Yep.
Yeah.
Now I'm mad at that cake.
I bet it's delicious, though.
Yeah,
it really is. 7
be.
layers of fudge, though, John.
Might be. Yeah. So, now let's talk about some of the other things, which I think one of these is kind of another important through line, but it's an important through line that I feel like isn't explored in any sort of really meaningful way, and that is this look at do we dare even call it command style, or is it just a disagreement about command decisions? I'm wondering if we actually get anything from that part of the episode. Chakotay wants to try something riskier. Tuvok's plan definitely wasn't a sure thing either, but that kind of drama feels very manufactured to me, because it wasn't where we as the audience felt like, oh wow, these are both equally valid, maybe or maybe not equally risky. We've already seen every system fall apart on the ship. So at a certain point, then it doesn't feel like a choice of a method of command. It just feels like, well, that guy's in charge and the other guy isn't right now. So be it. There's a lot missing there for me to feel like I'm emotionally invested in it, or I really want to root for one or the other. That exploration in the episode leaves me cold.
I have heard on occasion where, in situations like this, whether it's in the corporate professional world, especially in the military world, you don't want to see your leaders fight in front of their subordinates. You don't want to see the parents fight in front of the children.
Sure.
Because you don't know which parent to side with. So what happened in that one scene where Chakotay essentially flexed all over Tuvok and said, I'm in command? Is that understood? Of course Tuvok knows he's in command.
Yeah.
Why is Chakotay taking such offense to a suggestion?
It's Chakotay undermining his own command authority at that point. He really is. Like, maybe B'Elanna is impressed with that, but that should be about the only one.
That's what I mean, though.
Yeah.
You're drawing a line in the sand in front of all these people. The Maquis in the room, B'Elanna especially, are going to side with Chakotay, because that's her relationship with him. And then Starfleet, they're just going to default back to follow regs. So I have to back Tuvok.
Yeah.
You're very much walking a very, very delicate line of civil war, when it comes to that, or mutiny.
Yeah.
In the face of a giant alien distortion ring barreling down on you, throughout the course of the story. So it was just, there were so many well-earned moments in this episode, but so many ridiculously unearned moments in this episode also, which I think those are the things that make you remember this episode, but not for the right reasons.
Right. And I don't think it's wrong to explore a difference in style, a difference in approach, a difference in philosophy between Tuvok and Chakotay. Those are both great. We had a question on Engage not long ago, which is sort of looking at how appropriate is it for Chakotay to use his spirit guide, and then we kind of compared that to the logical, scientific point of view that somebody like Tuvok would have, sort of representing another big thread of Starfleet. I think these are interesting avenues to go down. This was absolutely not going down either of those avenues. It was just a weird flex. That's all you can call it. Yeah.
Speaking of, because it just got 10 degrees colder in my room. Why this fixation on Baxter in this episode, dude?
You got to stop,
Why?
Norman. You got to stop working out so hard, because
I can't walk not nearly as hard as him.
All right, here's maybe the only way that I can make sense out of it. Is that had this episode aired in production order, maybe they were thinking like, Well, everybody remembers Baxter. Everybody wants to know if Baxter is still working out super hard and has to go to the EMH. How's that? We all remember our old friend Baxter. This guy is practically a regular at this point. No, he wasn't then, and he isn't now. And they picked somebody who... This is not to disparage Tom Virtue at all.
No.
At all.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
If we're going to do something with a character who is interesting enough to bring back over and over again, I think we have to make that person really stand out. And Baxter simply does not stand out. He's just very, generically Starfleet. And we've already got, in the best possible way, we've got, literally the guy that B'Elanna calls Starfleet. You got Harry Kim, just sort of the fresh scrubbed, all-American kid, So Baxter is just not going to cut it. He's going to get lost in this. And why we keep running into him, it's like, well, we got to fill in these 8 more pages. I guess get that guy.
Okay. So that brings me up to my next point, though. And I'm not disparaging. Again, I'm not disparaging Tom Virtue. It's just, it's weird to see them focus on a character where they do have, as you said to your trivia, they do have a pocket of time where they need to stretch some of the material. Literally. Yeah. Like stretching out the corridors and stuff.
Yeah.
But then you have this wonderful, almost classic TOS, TMP kind of moment where they understand that the ring deposited this incredible amount of information into the computer, also took some of the information out of their computer, and then Janeway posits the possibility of maybe they were trying to communicate through me. Maybe they were trying to say something. Cake, anyone? Like, what the heck? I mean, seriously.
That's the most interesting thing in the episode. Is that
exactly
that was a first contact moment. And 20 gigaquads? Great made up word. If it's real, somebody will let me know. That much data, okay, are we coming back in the next episode with an examination of that data, and maybe it's navigational information for the Delta Quadrant? Maybe it's advanced defensive systems? I mean, there could be anything. Anything. Right. Maybe it's the key to every species for the next, 70 light years that this entity has amassed. Or that is fascinating. That is absolutely incredible. We have no idea how old that thing is. It's been trawling around the universe. Please place your bets now if we are ever going to come back to that in this series.
Right. So I wrote this note because I wanted to put it in context of what this could have been. The whale probe in Star Trek IV.
Oh my God. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, aside from Voyager, think about that. Yeah. The whale was directing its message to the Earth's oceans and then vaporizing them because the frequency could not talk to the whales, or the whales weren't there. George and Gracie weren't there.
Yeah.
This little piece of information in the story was given about, 30 to 45 seconds worth of dialogue time. And if you're looking for 8 minutes to fill, why not fill it with that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But rather it's turn around, bro, where's the workout room? I don't know, Baxter. Go towel yourself off or do something, right? Bro, it's too cold to towel myself off. Or turn around and wow, look, Neelix is jealous because I know that freaking person's address. I'm I know people's addresses because I walk by corridors. So...
Hey, if we learn anything from this episode, you know who it's not too cold for? Shirtless Asian man walking around in his quarters, opening up into engineering. Not too cold for him.
Oh, that's because he was taking a subatomic particle shower.
Got it.
We don't see them in this episode, but I have calculated a high probability that before the end of the episode, the Delaney sisters have become Twisted Sisters.
So one of the things, John, that we do at the end of Mission Log is we try and untwist ourselves from certain... Well, you know what? Let's spin that. It's a green dot, John. Can you put your left hand on the green dot?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, let me spin the board again.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we're not going to go to that position. So we're not going to twist ourselves from that. So
No.
For everyone who knows what we do here, this is what we do here for all of you new listeners. What we do here at the end of Mission Log is we take a look at if this episode holds up, does it stand the test of time? And then we take a look at the morals and meanings and messages of the episode if we can find any contained therein. So let's take a look at how we feel about the end of, well, the beginning and the end and the middle of Twisted at the end here. And John, let's start with you.
You know, I thought for a moment I was going to say that the best course of action is inaction and just in the show here. But we won't do that. We won't do that. That would be a fun trick to play sometime, but we won't do it today. So looking at Twisted and whether or not it holds up. All right, so this is the problem with doing an episode like this. Like, it's another episode where I feel like it would be so easy to just be totally dismissive of everything in it, and yet there are so very many flaws to pick apart here. Now, let's look for something that is maybe a positive here. I like a bit of weirdness in my Star Trek from time to time. I really do. Like, give me a good, like, Brannon Braga firing on all cylinders, doing something creepy, weird, horrific. I think that's good from time to time. And I'm sure that in a case like this, the writers sat around thinking, wow, wouldn't it just be so bizarre if the rooms and the spaces on Voyager just started rearranging themselves and folding in on each other? And, you know, picture this nightmarish M.C. Escher landscape that they have to fight their way through. I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate that there was an attempt to also have some character moments in and among that mystery. I can also appreciate that they somehow shoehorned in this first contact story. But then we're just left with so many unfollowed ideas, so many loose threads, and it's even more frustrating when you know that things just came back together in the end and will never be spoken of again. All right, there's also a bit of production shortcoming. We have a guest star. We mentioned Tom Virtue as Baxter, but why? Why is he there? Barely anyone else on the crew is seen in this entire episode. Are we just to assume that the people at the other extremities of Voyager, they've already gone through this, and they're just like, wow, I hope the people hanging out in the middle in the holodeck, hope they get out eventually because we've already gone through it. We're done. You know, they're referenced and Baxter is there, but it's all just very inconsequential. Even the art department seems to be confused about what's happening. You know, the graphic that we see on the computer shows Voyager bending and imploding, but our characters are just walking through corridor after corridor looking exactly the same as it did before. Although kind of on this meta level, I appreciate that this is how a Star Trek episode is made anyway. You know, you build a tiny section of corridor and they just keep redressing it, and you have the actors walk past the same corner on multiple takes. So you mentioned that, Norman, and I sort of appreciate that as almost like an in-joke of actually making the episode. Probably everybody making this had much grander ideas in their heads about how this episode would look and the mood that it would capture. But the problem is they failed to do those things. So therefore, the episode does not hold up. It does not live up to the promise of itself. Cannot give this one a pass. How about you, Norm?
So here at Mission Log, and especially, again, I'm going to reiterate this for new listeners, and we apologize if this is the first episode that you're actually hearing from us, but you'll...
Welcome.
Yes, exactly. Welcome. And Jim's over there. Baxter will let you in. What we want to do here is, again, I completely appreciate what you said, John, and I agree with you that we're not here to turn our podcast platform into a whipping post of things that we don't like. That's not what we do. But we do take very seriously is our understanding of an episode and what we do and break it down and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We take a look. We say this at the very beginning of every episode. We take a look at each and every episode of Star Trek, looking for the morals, meanings, and messages contained therein and seeing if they withstand the test of time. And perhaps, in this case of this episode, we should also add the line, so you don't have to.
Boom. There it is.
This episode, I just can't, in good conscience, recommend it to anyone because time is precious and I don't have the right to steal anyone's time for any reason, and especially for this episode. I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
For me, this episode just felt off. It's like when you taste food that's just turned, you know, kind of like mayonnaise, and you're like, is this mayonnaise bad?
Oh no.
And it's like it's kind of bad, but not kind of bad. And then you eat it, and you're like, you instantly regret it. Like you literally, like 49 minutes later, you instantly regret it because you know that you should have stopped. But we can't stop. You and I can't stop.
Yeah.
That's part of our mission.
Right.
The dialogue, the interactions with the crew just felt forced. And the whole thing with Sandrine and the EMH was gross. Just gross. Right? I'm not sure like what was worse. Like, you know, Chakotay being, at least Sandrine's been consistent. Chakotay's been way just all over the place. Anyway.
Yeah.
The last thing I need to say, and I agree with you, one of the things that could have been really, really interesting to see is kind of like the visual warping. The effects didn't hold up for me. It just didn't work at all for me. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't find something to discuss to saving throw this episode. Let's see if we can get at least a saving throw of at least 11, you know, on a check of 9.
Ooh. You might be asking for a lot. Yeah. And look, something that we talked about offline, though, that is not in this episode, so I'll say it again now for those of you who are listening. You know, the mission log rule is that every episode of Star Trek is simultaneously someone's favorite and someone's least favorite.
Yep.
This may not be my least favorite episode of Star Trek ever made, and yet it may be somebody's favorite. And I look forward to hearing about that, because if you're getting something out of it that we're not, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
That is great. Yep. And that's what this is all about, is carrying on that conversation. So what did we learn? What did we get out of it? What's the message? Is there one? Because see, the moments of conflict arise really from two places. It's the Kes-Neelix relationship, which again is played on the surface with Neelix's extreme jealousy, and that just makes it uncomfortable. And I hope that we have grown now past it, getting past this episode. But I don't know, because I haven't watched what's coming ahead. And then the command differences between Chakotay and Tuvok, which we addressed in the last segment. It's fine that these two have different opinions and different styles, but let's face it, there isn't really any right or wrong answer here. Whatever they do is going to fail until the anomaly passes through. So there isn't really a test of command skill or of knowledge. It's just a matter of, I guess we see what happens next. And then that is undermined, again, as you pointed out so well, Norman, is undermined by Chakotay's unprofessional behavior, calling out his next most senior officer in front of everybody else. It's a squandered opportunity for a couple of deep conversations to have then no depth. And that's really unfortunate here. I guess if there is something maybe mildly interested, that it is Tuvok's sort of direction, his suggestion that inaction may be the only logical course of action, because sometimes that's all you got. And maybe that's all I've got in this episode. Norm, how about you?
Well, I mean, I think you and I are on a similar page here, because there are moments in episodes, even episodes like this, where there's a really poignant moment of dialogue, and those are the things I usually fixate on, like why this particular direction, pushing into these two characters, focusing on what they're saying, and it just seems so different, like a different cut that may or may not specifically be the same tone of the episode. So it does stand out a bit. And when Tuvok suggested that they give in to the only option left to them to do nothing, it did remind me of this one quote that coincidentally kind of popped up in my social media feed right when I was actually reviewing this episode. And that's when Jean-Luc Picard, in Peak Performance, said to Data, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life." And it just kind of fits so well. And I changed my course of direction of what I was writing. I literally deleted 3 or 4 paragraphs of where I was going to go because I believe that quote is relevant to the end of this episode. I believe that what Tuvok was suggesting when he was convincing the crew to stand down, he was trying to make a point of there is something about trying to overcome the fear of the unknown. That death is the result of failure. That's what we think. That's what he's trying to reverse in many people's ideas about what's going to happen to them. It's kind of like the end of Spectre of the Gun, when Spock mind melds with everyone, because in the physics of the world of Spectre of the Gun, if you're shot by a gun, you die. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case, and Spock makes everyone certain, the way Bones says, we're not as certain as your Vulcan mind, and Spock's like, I can make that happen for you. So the certainty was removed from them, and all they have left is the logic of what the problem is. And the problem is, let the energy pass through, death is not certain, and see what happens after that. So maybe, and I do like that Chakotay kind of comes on board with this. He says to B'Elanna, he said, whatever this thing is, B'Elanna is bigger and more powerful than we are. Maybe this is one bear we can't wrestle to the ground. I did cringe at that one a little bit. But too. But maybe the whole point of their kind of kumbaya moment at the end is maybe, like Tuvok says, there's nothing we can do but let it happen and hope for the best.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Parturition.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11. Online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers Adam Brusky, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, John Mann, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. Engaging Writer's Hat Mode. Maybe this is the episode they should have titled Non Sequitur. Don't believe me? Here, have some cake. Brunk. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.